Is your holiday to-do list already a mile long? Maybe you're thinking about gift shopping and holiday parties and family gatherings and meal planning, everything all at once. For a lot of us with ADHD brains, the holidays bring this mix of both joy and excitement and also, let's be real, a bit of dread. On the one hand, there are so many things to look forward to: cozy traditions, time with the people we love, maybe even that fresh start feeling as the new year approaches. But at the same time, there's usually pressure and stress, sometimes even guilt and disappointment if the season doesn't look how we originally hoped. And again, if you have an ADHD brain like me, you know those highs and lows can feel incredibly intense. Routines get thrown off, deadlines sneak up, sensory overload kicks in, and that all or nothing pressure to make it quote unquote perfect can leave us feeling stuck. But here's the good news: holiday stress does not have to run the show. And in episode 328 of the I'm Busy Being Awesome podcast, we are exploring exactly how to ensure that happens. Let's get into it. Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the podcast. This episode is coming out the second week of November, which I can hardly believe as I say it. And even less believable is the fact that the holidays are right around the corner. I mean, Halloween has officially come and gone, which means the countdown is on. But do not worry, I've got you. We're going to make it through. In today's episode, we are exploring what I tend to think about as a typical holiday stress curve, which essentially reflects how our experience of stress and overwhelm tends to build up, to peak, and eventually crash throughout the season. And then from there, we're going to talk about 5 supportive strategies to help you sidestep that typical stress curve by preparing for what's ahead without overloading yourself, figuring out how to navigate the chaos in real time, and then finally supportive ways to recover at a much faster pace after the zaniness of the holiday season ends. So essentially, my goal with this episode is to give you tangible tools that you can start using today to enjoy a calmer, more meaningful season overall. Before we dive in, however, I also want to remind you that last month I launched my course called Overwhelm to Action, which is truly a deep dive, a literal step-by-step system into navigating overwhelm in any season with an ADHD brain. So if you are looking for a guided step-by-step process with short videos, actionable strategies, all designed for your unique overwhelm type, and even 2 live group Q&A calls with me, it's all designed to help you create a personalized overwhelm toolkit for your brain to help you navigate it anytime it strikes. If you are looking for that support, be sure to head to I'mBusyBeingAwesome.com/overwhelm, where you can learn more and sign up. Honestly, I can't think of a better time than right now before the holidays come on full steam. So with that in mind, let's talk about this holiday stress, and more specifically, the holiday stress curve and what we can do to support ourselves through it. So with this holiday stress curve, what am I talking about here? Well, I like to think about this curve in 3 parts. Typically, we begin with this buildup phase. So this is when stress starts creeping in, often before the holidays even arrive. Depending on when you're listening to this episode, you may be feeling inklings of this already today. Maybe you're thinking about everything you quote unquote should get done: the shopping, the holiday cards, the parties, the cooking, whatever it is. Your deadlines are sneaking up, your routines are probably getting disrupted, and it feels like you're constantly playing catch up. If this sounds familiar, you're probably in the buildup phase. So that's the first part of the holiday stress curve. Then we hit peak phase. This is when we're in the thick of it. The weeks of the holiday gatherings, the busy travel, the overstimulation of crowded stores, busy airports, noisy houses, jam-packed schedules. For ADHD brains, this phase can feel especially intense. because our executive functions are already stretched quite thin. And now we're also dealing with sensory overload and potentially some big emotions on top of it. And also, we're dealing with big emotions in terms of joy and delight and love. So again, it's a 50-50. It's a both and. But I think it's important for us to recognize that during this peak experience, we can be feeling a lot of that overload as well. And then finally, there is the post-holiday crash. This is usually when the adrenaline suddenly disappears, the exhaustion hits full force, and then sometimes guilt, disappointment, sometimes even shame can creep in. Maybe you feel incredibly drained. Maybe you find yourself replaying what didn't go, quote unquote, perfectly. Maybe you're just trying to recover from the chaos. Whatever it is, that is the crash. So in a nutshell, this is the typical holiday stress curve. We have the stress that builds up, that spikes, and then crashes. Now here's the important part. When we can identify this pattern, we can actually interrupt it. We don't have to keep riding that curve every single time, every single year. Instead, we can start putting in supports to help us soften that buildup a bit, to help us navigate the peak with a bit more calm, and to recover with a lot more kindness. And that's exactly what we're going to do in this episode, is to help us navigate this stress curve so that it's not such an intense peak. Instead, let's have some more gentle rolling hills where the stress is manageable. It's not going to take us out. So I'll walk you through 5 different strategies and show you how you can use each one to help you step off that typical stress curve and create a holiday season that feels calmer and much more doable for you. So let's start by talking about that first phase, the buildup. Again, this is where most of us probably are right now if you're listening to this in real time or around real time. It's that lead up to where the holiday stress is creeping in little by little. You're probably feeling the pressure of shopping or decorating, planning, saying yes to commitments. And here's the tricky part. This is often when we find ourselves accidentally overloading ourselves before the season even begins. Because as we know, ADHD brains live in now or not now. So when people ask us, hey, would you be interested in this? Would you want to do this? And it's not now, we're like, yes, that sounds amazing. Because we don't understand how much that's going to demand of us once those things that are not now become now all at the same time. So what can we do here? What can we do maybe a little bit differently to help navigate that buildup? Let's talk about 3 different ADHD-friendly strategies to ease the buildup. And we're going to start with one of my favorites called the Good, Better, Best framework. So I have absolutely talked about this framework in the past. If you're one of my clients, you for sure know it. I think this is such an effective approach. I love using this framework anytime I think about goals or make plans where I know that my perfectionist brain might come online and slip into unreasonable expectations. I absolutely love the Good, Better, Best framework for this. So here's how it works. Instead of setting one rigid goal or plan or vision for yourself for your holidays, you create 3 different versions. So good is the version that your brain probably thinks that can't possibly count. It's the version that you know you can create even on your lowest capacity day. All right, so we create our good version. Then we create our better version. This is your realistic middle ground. Then we create a best version of that goal or that plan. This is your stretch goal. This is the version that, yes, it would be great to have happen if we have all the energy and the capacity and all the stars align and it's a blue moon on Thursday. It might not happen. That's okay, because we have our good and better versions as well. I think this is such a helpful antidote to all or nothing thinking, which so many of us ADHD brains deal with. Because if our brains are thinking, well, I can't do that perfectly, I can't do this best version, we often think it's not worth doing at all. But when we create variation, when we have our good, better, and best options, every option counts, which is so powerful. I'll give you an example. Let's think about holiday decorating. So a good version of holiday decorating, maybe it's I put a wreath on the door. Done. Okay? There was actually a season, I think it was maybe 2015, 2016 or so. I did not have capacity whatsoever to decorate. And I was also really sad about that because I typically do love this process. I love the tradition of it. So I was figuring out what I could do, and I let myself do the quote unquote good version of this goal. Now, I didn't have this language at the time, but when I look back, that is what I did. My good version of this goal for decorating was literally putting up our fake Christmas tree that is already pre-lit. And I let that be enough. I did not decorate it with a thing. I put together the 3 pieces of the tree and I plugged it in the wall. And you know what? That allowed me to have the warmth of the twinkle lights, which was everything. That was enough. Okay? So let yourself clarify what a good version could be. Then we get to better. So again, we're thinking about decoration. Maybe the better version is you also decorate the tree, or you decorate one room. And then the best version might be going all out and you do the whole house and you do it while listening to music or something, or maybe you do all the lights outside, whatever it is. By clarifying a good, better, best version, every single one of them is a win. And when you let yourself count that good as good enough, you're further lowering the pressure so that it's not in that pressure cooker building on that stress curve. Instead, we're able to enjoy the experience and keep the momentum going without unnecessary stress. So that is strategy number 1 to minimize this build-up phase of the stress curve. Set good, better, best goals to help you navigate expectations. Then we get to strategy 2, which is to ask ourselves, what if it were easy? Or what would easy look like? This is one of my favorite questions to use when my brain is overcomplicating things. So often, especially in this building part of the stress curve, our brains spin out trying to make everything look perfect, be perfect, the perfect meal, the perfect gift, the perfect holiday card. We try and make everything quote unquote perfect, and the harder we try, the heavier it feels. It's just not fun anymore. And then, like I said, if your brain's like mine, it probably wants to overcomplicate the whole process as well. But when we can pause and step back and go, okay, hold on. What would easy look like here? I'm telling you, you open the door to much simpler, more sustainable options. For example, let's say you're feeling stressed about hosting a holiday meal or some sort of gathering. Instead of putting on the pressure to cook this elaborate 5-course dinner, what would easy look like? Maybe that means hosting a potluck. Everybody brings their favorite thing. Or maybe it means what I did last Thanksgiving, where I ordered the whole thing, save for making the pies. I did want to do that, but I ordered everything from Whole Foods, and I let that be more than enough. Honestly, it was essentially the same price even than if I were to cook it all from scratch. And I just let that be fine. I catered it all in. And then when it was time to get the food ready, I put the food in dishes, warmed them in the oven, and I was actually able to enjoy the day with my family rather than riding that stress curve up higher and higher in the kitchen trying to get the meal ready. Same thing with gifts. If your brain tends to agonize over finding the ideal gift or wondering what to buy each person, what if it were easy? Maybe you choose a theme. Maybe everybody gets a book this year. And then you think about their interests and you get a book on that theme. Or maybe everybody gets some sort of experience. Or, here's a weird idea. Maybe we just ask people what they want. I know it's not super fun and novel, but also that would be easy. So this question, it gives your brain permission to find that easier path forward. And during the holidays, I don't know about you, but for me, easier is almost always better. Not always, but almost always. The third strategy in this build-up phase is if-then planning. So this is where you look ahead and anticipate the common obstacles, the common stressors that, frankly, are inevitably going to pop up for you at some point throughout the season. And you think about them, you identify those, and then you create a simple plan for what you'll do if and when they inevitably happen. So this can sound like, if this obstacle happens, then I will do this thing. The beauty of if-then planning is that it reduces the need for on-the-spot decision-making. Yes, please, can all of us just celebrate that for a moment? Can we all reduce the need for on-the-spot decision-making as often as possible? When you are already stressed out and your executive functions are running low, having a pre-decided plan makes it so much easier to follow through on it. It is such a gift to future you. So for example, if I start feeling overstimulated at a party, then I will step outside for 5 minutes for a reset. If it's 8 p.m., the night before the gift exchange, and I still haven't wrapped my gifts, then I will throw everything in separate bags. If Aunt Carol makes a passive-aggressive comment about my parenting, then I will take a breath and say, thanks for your input, and change the subject. Essentially, what we're doing is taking something predictable and giving your brain a script ahead of time. It's kind of like putting up bumpers on a bowling lane. It helps you stay on track without requiring a whole bunch of extra energy in the moment. So again, those are 3 powerful ways to help soften that build-up phase of the stress curve. First, we use good, better, best to counter our all or nothing thinking. We ask ourselves, what if it were easy, to cut through perfectionism? And we use if-then planning to help navigate obstacles ahead of time. I'm telling you, using just one of these strategies, it can completely transform how you move into and through the holiday season. And if you can layer them together, it makes that build-up feel so much lighter if it's there at all. Okay, so now let's move into the peak phase of the holiday stress curve. This is the thick of it, the big weeks where everything is happening at once. Maybe you have multiple family gatherings, travel days, parties, shopping, wrapping, cooking. The kids are off of school for the 1147th day, and it's noisy and it's busy and there's a lot of stimulation all at once. For ADHD brains, this phase can be especially tough because our executive functions are already stretched thin. We're juggling these transitions and handling big emotions and trying to remember details and navigating all the sensory overload of crowded spaces and music and lights and expectations. No wonder so many of us feel fried by this point. So the key strategy for this peak phase is something called completing the stress cycle. And before I talk about the specifics here, I want to give a huge shout out to the Nagoski sisters, Amelia and Emily Nagoski, who wrote a powerful book called Burnout. And in Burnout, they talk about the importance of completing the stress cycle. That's where I first learned about this concept. So if you want to dive into this idea even further, I highly recommend checking it out. It's called Burnout. I will link to it in the show notes. But like I said, this key strategy for our peak part of the stress curve is completing the stress cycle. And here's what I mean by that. Stress doesn't just happen in our minds. It also happens in our bodies. So when we face some sort of stressful situation, our bodies release stress hormones like cortisol, like adrenaline. And this makes sense given how we've evolved. I mean, if you think about it, in the past, thousands of years ago, when maybe we were getting chased by a saber-toothed tiger or something in nature, our body would run through or fight through all of those hormones and it would naturally reset. Now, in today's world, our stress looks a whole lot more like tense holiday dinners or a long day of errands in crowded stores. It might look like airline delays and cancellations or juggling a really full schedule, not getting chased by a saber-toothed tiger. Thank goodness. So these situations, they don't give us that physical means of releasing the stress hormones like running away from a tiger would. So the stress stays in our bodies. It makes us feel tense and irritable and stuck. And that's why it's so important to intentionally complete the stress cycle. It's about giving your body a signal that the stressful event is over and that it's safe to relax. So what does that look like? Well, it can actually be really simple. You could put on your favorite song, dance around the kitchen for 5 minutes after a long shopping trip with a lot of overstimulation. I realize I offer dancing a lot. That is one of my favorite ways to move through emotion. So there it is again. Use it to move through your stress. You might step into the bathroom or a quiet room or something if you're at a party and feeling really overwhelmed, and you do a few rounds of a physiological sigh, maybe 3 or 4 rounds of it. It's this 3-part breath. You do a long inhale followed by a shorter inhale and then a slow exhale. Maybe you share a long hug with someone. There's research that shows it takes about 20 seconds of a hug to help your body reset. Maybe you let yourself have a good cry. If your emotions are really big, you're feeling it. I often say well, my emotions are just leaking out of my eyes again. Clearly I need to cry. Crying is the body's natural way of releasing stress. It's a fantastic means to do so, if that works for you. Maybe you spend 10 minutes doing something creative, doodling, writing, playing music as a way to kind of process through that stress. Maybe you laugh at something. Genuine hard belly laugh can also help you move through that stress. So none of this has to be super complicated, super time consuming. In fact, the simpler, the better. The goal is to give your nervous system an outlet so that stress doesn't keep building. And the best part is these resets don't just help you feel calmer in the moment. They actually also help prevent the stress from carrying forward into the next day or the next event. So by completing the stress cycle during its peak, you're making it so much easier to lessen or avoid the post-holiday crash, that last part of the curve, so much more, right? It's much more likely that you will lessen it or sidestep it altogether. So in this peak phase, the reminder is simple. Your stress needs an outlet. Whether it's movement or breath or connection or expression, give your body a way to complete the cycle. I am telling you, your future self will thank you. All right, then we get into the final part of the holiday stress curve, this post-holiday crash. This is usually when all of that adrenaline disappears, the excitement is over, your body finally has a chance to catch up, which often means exhaustion sets in hard. For a lot of us, this is also the point where the inner critic might get loud and start replaying those moments that didn't go perfectly. We start beating ourselves up for the things we forgot or that we wish we would have handled differently or said differently. So if this sounds familiar, please know you're not alone. And that's exactly where our final strategy comes in here, which is radical self-compassion. Now, I know that self-compassion can sometimes sound like this vague, fluffy idea, but I promise you it is one of the most powerful tools that you can practice, especially after a demanding season like the holidays. Because here's the truth. Mistakes and messy moments are going to happen. That is part of being human. You're going to forget something. You're going to feel overwhelmed at times. You're probably going to snap at someone you love. None of this means that you've failed. It means that you're human. Welcome. Welcome to being human. I actually have a whole podcast on this topic. I will link to it in the show notes. But one of my favorite phrases to use to help myself remember this very annoying fact that we are human and not robot is, well, there I go being human again. I find this is such a gentle reminder that imperfection doesn't have to be a problem. We don't need to solve for it. Instead, it's expected and it's okay. So for example, you forget an ingredient for some recipe. Instead of spiraling into, oh my gosh, when am I going to get my act together? Why can't I just remember these things? We can go, well, there I go being human again. Thank goodness for ChatGPT. What can I use as a substitute? Maybe you snap at your kids after a long day. Instead of letting the guilt eat you alive, pause and you remind yourself, okay, there I go being human again. And you reconnect with yourself so you can repair with them. Maybe you skipped an event because you were worn out. You were too tired. Instead of being hard on yourself and beating yourself up, you could remind yourself, yes, there I go being human again, needing rest and to recharge. I'm so glad I gave my brain and my body what it needed. I am telling you, this is the difference between getting stuck in those spirals, beating ourselves up, versus moving forward with care, with curiosity. When you practice that radical self-compassion, you create space to actually learn from the experience and recover faster without adding that extra layer of stress. So as you move through that post-holiday phase, remember, give yourself permission to be human. I know that sounds ridiculous, but I feel like we need this reminder. Sometimes we do not approve that we are human. And so give yourself permission. You are human. Perfection is not the goal. What matters is kindness, presence, giving yourself rest. Okay? Practice self-compassion, especially in this come down period. So with this final strategy, you now have the tools for every phase of the stress curve. You can soften that buildup, you can navigate the peak with greater calm, and you can recover from the crash with genuine compassion. So let's bring this all together. We started by looking at the typical holiday stress curve, how stress often builds up and peaks and crashes, and then we mapped out our 5 strategies to help you step off that curve. We talked about the good, better, best goals to help us lower pressure while maintaining momentum, asking what if it were easy, or what would easy look like to help us cut through overcomplicating things, and setting up if-then plans to help us prepare for those obstacles before they happen. We then talked about learning how to complete the stress cycle so stress doesn't just pile up, and then finally, how we can practice radical self-compassion to recover with kindness instead of guilt and shame and beating ourselves up. Remember, the holidays do not have to be perfect to be meaningful. When you work with your brain instead of against it, you open up so much space for greater calm, presence, and enjoying those moments that matter most to you. And if you want to take this work even deeper, I have 2 resources for you. First, a reminder to take my free quiz to discover your unique overwhelm type and supportive strategies to help. And you can take that at I'mBusyBeingAwesome.com/quiz. It's also linked in the show notes. And second, if you're ready for that step-by-step support, my Overwhelm to Action course is open now, and it is designed specifically for ADHD brains and walks you through my complete 4-step system to move from that frazzled chaos to calm and clear. And you do it with short, actionable lessons, practical tools for your specific overwhelm type, and 2 live Q&A group calls with me. You have everything you need to build your personalized overwhelm toolkit and shift into sustainable action. So you can head to I'mBusyBeingAwesome.com/overwhelm to learn more and check it out. And finally, if you know somebody who might also be navigating a rather steep stress curve this holiday season, would you be a rock star and share this episode with them? You could send it in a text message. You could snap a screenshot, share it on your Instagram stories. Whatever you do, please know I so appreciate your support in helping me get these strategies to even more busy, awesome brains who need them. All right, my friends, that's going to do it for us this week. And if you are ready to take these concepts and apply them to your life, if you're ready to learn how to support your ADHD in a way that works best for you, I invite you to check out today's show notes where you can learn more about how we can work together, both in my small group coaching program, We're Busy Being Awesome, and in one-on-one coaching. Also, if you want to discover the unique way that overwhelm presents for your brain, the obstacles those patterns create, and powerful steps to shift from overwhelm into action today, be sure to take my free quiz and discover your overwhelm type. You can tap to the link in the show notes or head to I'mBusyBeingAwesome.com/quiz. Until next time, keep being awesome. I'll talk with you soon.